All right, so if you're a developer, you've definitely heard the term Code Wiki thrown around. It sounds kind of official, kind of important, but what is it really? Is it a specific tool, a website, maybe just a folder? Well, the answer is kind of yes to all of that. And today we're going to clear up all that confusion and show you how to turn this idea into a powerful local brain for your entire project. Look, you're not alone if you've typed this exact question into Google. We've all been there. You ask a senior developer, and you get this kind of vague, hand-wavy answer. And that's because Code Wiki isn't one single thing. And that, right there, is the key to understanding everything. And this is the absolute core of the confusion. There's no Code Wiki app you can just go download. It's more of a concept. And it gets so confusing because developers use that one single term to talk about two completely different ways of handling documentation. So let's do this. Let's unpack those two meanings. By the end of this explainer, you're going to know exactly which approach is right for your project, and more importantly, how you can start using it on your own machine, like today. From this moment on, whenever you hear someone say Code Wiki, I want you to immediately think to yourself, okay, which of the two paths are they talking about? Seriously, making that little distinction in your head is the key to unlocking this whole thing. And here they are, side by side. On one hand, you've got the official GitHub Wiki. That's a feature built right into every single repository. And on the other hand, you have this more general idea, an internal wiki, which is really just a simple folder of docs that lives right inside your project's code. Let's break down the most common one first. Okay, path number one, the GitHub Wiki. If you've ever heard someone mention a Code Wiki for a project hosted on GitHub, this is almost certainly what they meant. So what is it? Well, it's basically a simple little documentation website that GitHub gives you for free with every repository. Now, the most important word on this slide, the one you really need to remember, is separate. This wiki lives alongside your code, not inside of it. It even has its own separate version history. So what do people actually put in there? Well, think of it as your project's shared memory. It's perfect for all that big picture stuff, architecture notes, why you made certain design decisions, but it's also incredibly useful for the practical day-to-day stuff, like step-by-step setup guides for new developers, troubleshooting common problems, and just setting the rules of the road with development guidelines. Okay, this all sounds pretty good. Having a central place for docs is great, but let's be real for a second. No developer wants to be stuck editing documentation in some tiny little text box in a web browser all day. So the immediate, natural question is, how can I actually work on this on my own machine, in my own editor? And the answer is surprisingly, beautifully simple. A GitHub Wiki is just another Git repo. That's it. You can clone it, you can edit it, and you can push changes just like you do with all your source code. The only little trick, the only secret, is that little .wiki.git at the end of the URL. So here's the entire workflow, soup to nuts. First, you have to go to the Wiki tab on GitHub and just create one page online to get it started. After that, you clone it down using that command we just saw. Now you can go nuts, edit all the Markdown files you want in VS Code, or whatever your favorite editor is. When you're done, it's just the same old git add, commit, and push you already do 100 times a day. And just like that, your changes are live on the wiki. It's honestly that easy. All right, that was path one. Now let's explore the second, and honestly in a lot of ways, the more powerful meaning of a Code Wiki. This is the internal wiki, where your documentation lives and breathes right inside your actual code base. The whole idea here is just dead simple. You create a folder, most people call it docs, right there inside your project's main repository. And inside, you just start adding your Markdown files. Now, the absolute killer feature of this approach is that your documentation is now versioned with your code. That means when you check out an old branch from 6 months ago, you get the docs that were relevant for that exact version of the code. And you can just see how natural this feels, right? You've got your source folder for your source code, your tests folder for your tests, and a docs folder sitting right there alongside them. Your project's entire brain lives right inside the project itself. It just makes sense. But here's where it gets really cool. You're not just stuck reading boring, plain text files in a folder. There's this huge ecosystem of amazing tools, things like MkDocs, Docusaurus, and Sphinx, that can take that simple folder of text and magically transform it into a beautiful, searchable, professional-looking documentation website. And the workflow is just a dream. I mean, with a tool like MkDocs, for example, you can just run one simple command in your terminal, mkdocs serve, and boom, Instantly, that folder of Markdown files is running as a full-blown website on your local machine. And it'll even auto-refresh as you type. It's amazing. So we've explored the two paths. You've got the built-in separate GitHub Wiki, and you've got the integrated versioned internal wiki. Now for the most important part. Let's bring it all back together so you can decide which path is the right one for you and your project. Let's just break it down, head to head. Location, the GitHub Wiki is totally separate, while the internal wiki lives right inside your code repo. Setup, the GitHub Wiki is already built in, zero setup required. The internal wiki needs you to install a simple tool like MkDocs. Versioning, this is the big one. The GitHub Wiki has its own separate Git history. The internal wiki is versioned right alongside your code. So which is best for what? Well, the GitHub Wiki is awesome for general project info and guides that don't change too often. But the internal wiki is an absolute game changer for any documentation that's tightly coupled to specific versions of your code, like an API reference. And that brings us right back to the final and most important question. Which wiki is your project going to use? Are you going to go for the zero setup convenience of the GitHub Wiki for your high-level guidelines? Or are you going to embrace the sheer power of an internal wiki, keeping your documentation perfectly in sync with every single line of code you commit? Now you finally have the clarity to make that choice.